What's up, guys? This is Brave, and I'm back with another review of Ready to Love, The Last Resort. This is the reunion part 2, and let's go ahead and break this episode down. So, of course, we start this episode off with Tommy asking Joy and Jay if they are a couple, and at first, Jay, he's going all around in circles about, where they left off and all this stuff. And Joy just has to come out and say they're not together. At this moment, they've been on one official date, but nothing more has happened. Joy does say that if she was to start dating, that Jay is probably the guy who she would, be going out with. But so far, they are not together. Which I feel like after this show and her finding out about how he kept Simone a secret and how him and Winter were on some late night sneaky links. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's probably done with Jay after this. So we quickly talked to Danny and Sam, and as we all know, those two people both got eliminated on the first episode. Now, me personally, I feel like this show shouldn't eliminate people on the first night, just because you don't really get to know somebody because you talk to them within the first episode of any show. But I digress. So, as for Danny, she looks really good, and I thought that she should have stayed on the show. She was definitely a person who I was rooting for when I heard her backstory, and, she talked about how, yes, of course, she gives off the friend vibe, and, she was being her authentic self, but, like she talked to Tommy about, do you consider your wife to be your friend? And he's like, of course. And she's like, yeah, a relationship starts with a friendship. And I was like, you know what? I absolutely agree with her on that, because at the end of the day, I feel like, I don't know why those guys ended up friend zoning her, but she was just very comfortable in her skin. She talked about relatable topics, and I feel like they friend zoned her for no reason. Danny should have been one of the people who was actually trying to find love. But you know what? Now that I think about it, she shouldn't have been with those guys, because none of them were really looking for love. Maybe if her and Rashid would have hit it off, that would have been great. But the rest of those guys, no. So they talked to Sam, and come to find out, he has a baby on the way. As we know, he has 2 other children by 2 other baby mamas, and this is his 3rd baby mama. He knew that he had a baby on the way when they were filming the show. He knew prior to that. So he realized that there's some self-adjusting that he has to do, and I really hope that he can figure that out as to why he keeps, making all these kids, but no relationship to show for it. So the next 2 people that are brought onto the stage are Raymond and Shay. And as we know, Raymond, he was 52. He brought up how he had 5 kids and how he was running around the city with Tank and Genuine, as if he was the 3rd member of TGT. And Shay was the loudmouth chef who made no connections. And, we get the playback of them, and Raymond, he still feels like marriage, is not for him, basically, because he feels like it's just a piece of paper. He even said, what's the difference between marriage and shacking with somebody for 10 years? And it's easy. Marriage, you are legally binded to that person. Shacking up, hell, y'all just roommates, and sometimes y'all hook up together. So there's that. Then we have Shay, who's like, oh, I guess I'm just not for everybody, and that's okay. But I feel like she wasn't into any of the guys, and she friend zoned herself. She wanted to be the loudmouth homegirl. She was honestly there just for camera time. But for some reason, Shay and Raymond, they had a connection, And I guess they're kind of talking, maybe seeing each other. It wasn't really clear, but Tommy was like, if it ever gets to that point, Raymond, get the paperwork, get married, basically. And Shay's like, messing around with me, he definitely gonna get the papers. And I'm like, okay, I guess. I don't see it for Raymond and Shay. Let me know what y'all think about that couple down below. So we now get Naya and Chris. This is actually the couple that I've been waiting for them to talk to, because from the start of the show, these two had hard eyes for each other, and then one conversation about finances completely shut down their possibility of being together. So we get the playback of, how everything went down with them, and then Chris, he starts to explain, how Naya denying his interest in her and how she was interested in him, that was kind of like a gut blow to him. And also, he did not know that she even had an interest in Edwin, and that was a shocker to him. One thing that really annoyed me was how Adriana, of all people, decided to chime in and be like, well, basically Chris should have explored his options. And I'm like, you of all people need not to talk about exploring options the way you led Rashid on when you were never going to choose that man. So let's not even go there. But as far as Chris goes, I do think that the reason why he never even explored his options was because he felt like Naya was his person. And like I said in previous reviews, that once the ladies claim a man on this show, nobody really goes for that guy. They don't even have conversations with that guy, because that guy then belongs to whoever has claimed him. So we next get Naya talking, and her issue was that when he did have that conversation with, I think it was like Joy and Simone, another thing that we did not know, that her and Chris had already talked about it, and she felt like he basically shouldn't have took their business outside of just them two talking, because she didn't want that to get around to everybody else. So Naya also talks about how she didn't just decide to be interested in Edwin and then not be interested in Chris. She's basically saying that she has kept her feelings separate with these guys, and at the end of the day, she would still date both of them. So whoever likes Naya, there's a chance that she will date you. She also happens to say that her and Edwin, they have dated, they have gone out on a few dates, and I'm actually surprised by that, just because once they were on the show, and how all the other guys were like, she was really into Chris, and she just like moved on to Edwin, and even Edwin would chime in and be like, oh, she did kind of move on to me quite fast. I thought he wasn't really, fooling with her like that. So we finally get the conversation about Naya leaving, and we know how that was, her storming off, yelling about how she got some boyfriend in Atlanta. She wasn't interested in Chris or Edwin, all that drama. Oh, also, I can't forget about her telling Rashid to tell it to the couch, and him actually doing it. So, they ask Naya, like, is this how you really felt? And she's like, no, I was just talking shit. Like, she was pissed off that she got kicked off the show, and basically none of the guys wanted her, so she was pissed off. So she was just yelling things out, just to be a loudmouth, and that's how she decided to express herself. And when Tommy asked her if she would do it, she would have done her exit differently, she said no, because in the moment, those were her emotions, and she felt like yelling out that she didn't want nobody and she had some man in Atlanta, even though it was all a lie. So Tommy ends up asking Edwin, what do you think about that? Considering, y'all still talk or whatever. And Edwin is like, in the moment, she was just talking. She was basically just yelling something out. And he knows that deep down, that's not how she feels. And she could say, she wasn't into Edwin all she wants to. He knows that it's not true. So Edwin goes a little bit further into him and Nia dating, and he continues to say that they dated, which means that happened in the past, but now he's trying to get his business together, and he still needs to focus on his self-care. Honestly, I wish that he would stop using the term self-care. I need for him to say, I need to get my mental health, work on my mental health. I wish that he would say that instead, because when I think of like self-care, I think of a person having a relaxation break. But that's a whole nother thing. So after this, of course, Tommy asks Chris, what he takes away from the experience. And Chris, he has realized that he is all in every aspect of his life. When it comes to his work, he's all in. When it comes to family, he's all in. And if he is interested in a woman, he is all in. And he said that he is not looking, but he is waiting for his queen to, come to him. And here goes Nia, like, oh, well, a man should, seek the woman, or whatever she was trying to say, however that saying goes. And I'm like, girl, you shouldn't even be trying to chime in, because you don't want this man, remember? Let him say whatever he got to say, because remember, he wasn't the man for you. So we finally have Rashid, Adriana, and Denise on the stage, you guys. And I'm like, here comes the mess. So, of course, we play back the whole Rashid being light-skinned and Rashid being a narcissist. And I'm not going to lie, I feel like Adriana definitely played a role in the idea of Rashid being light-skinned being a huge issue, because even though Denise listed him being light-skinned and tall and all those other characteristics, Adriana knew what she was doing when she brought it up to Rashid to mention the light-skinned comment. Like, she knew what she was doing, because at the end of the day, they had that conversation. Wasn't it in Tommy's tavern that they had that conversation? And Tommy didn't call her out for calling him light-skinned. Then, like, I don't understand how that became the biggest focus of that conversation. But whatever. They go on about how Denise needs to apologize to Rashid. And I agree with all the things that he was saying, that, he had empathy for her, but he still has to answer to, now people feel like he may be a narcissist because she said that about him. And as she's trying to give this, I guess you could call it apology, because let's be honest, it was not a real apology, because Denise felt like her and Rashid had already squashed their issue, so why are we talking about this right now? Like, you can already tell that is how she was feeling. So then here we go with Adriana. Baby girl thought this was her time to shine, so she starts to chime in and tell Denise how Denise treated her very inferiorly, and how, her and Denise, they have clashed this whole time, and she never did anything to Denise, or at least that's what she feels like. She feels like she's never done anything to Denise. But let's be honest here. I think that the only reason why she was even interested in Calfani was because Denise was interested, and she felt like, oh, well, since you want to come for Rashid, I'm going to go ahead and take your man. I'm going to take Calfani from you. So these two ladies, they are going back and forth, and Denise feels like, when Adriana approached her about Rashid. First of all, that wasn't her place to do. And secondly, she felt like, she was trying to check her when, they were talking about Rashid. And let's be honest, Adriana was definitely trying to check Denise about the Rashid situation, even though her and Rashid ain't together. So these ladies are going back and forth about where they from and all this crap. But one thing that stood out to me within all of this, did any of you guys notice how Adriana's tone completely changed? Adriana was not the, oh my God, I just love you guys. Oh my God, look at Kalfani, he's so sweet. Oh my God. Like, you know how she goes into that baby voice and that sweet, demure girl. And this voice and tone was a total different person. Anyways, so Tommy is like, is anybody interested in squashing this? And Rashid says, well, me and Denise, we already squashed this. And she agreed. And I'm like, well, what the hell was we just talking about a damn apology for? If you just said that y'all already squashed it and you feel like it's done, what the hell were we on this stage here talking about Denise need to apologize for? I don't even understand. Like, was that another scene that wasn't shown to the public? Did they have another conversation after that the one conversation that they had about this situation? Like, I need to know. When they did ask Adriana and Denise if they could squash the beef, Denise says that it's squashed. Adriana is like, me and her, we would never be two women that get along. So that further lets us know that the beef is not squashed. Adriana feels some type of way. So they take a break and we do see, everybody backstage. And there's a group of women. I believe it's Simone, Alicia, Adriana, and I think it was that girl Danny that was back there as well. And Simone is like, oh, well, I'm not the crazy one. And Adriana's like, you never were, the crazy cast member. And then we have Adriana going back to her little sweet baby voice and it's like, oh my God, like, I don't understand, why she was coming at me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, girl, oh, so now your voice got back? Now you want to use your baby voice? Okay. All right, so we finally get the four that started out one way and ended another. And what I mean by that, the original couples were Rashid and Adriana and Denise and Kalfani. And then next thing you know, it was Kalfani and Adriana. So we first started talking about how, of course we know that Rashid and Adriana had been on a date before and they ghosted each other, and now she felt like, maybe this was the universe trying to bring them back together. And then we go on to Tommy asking, what made Adriana pull away from Rashid. And she's like, oh, well, I feel like he started to pull away from me once he saw how close me and Kalfani were getting. And Rashid is like, of course I'm going to pull away if I see that you have interest in somebody else, which makes all the sense in the world, because at the end of the day, I understand the setup of the show, but if I'm interested in you, and I see that you are showing so much more interest in somebody else, what the hell am I doing? And like Rashid said, I'm not chasing you. I've courted you. I've done everything. I put my best foot forward. But if that's not what you going for, girl, ain't no man about to chase after you. Hell, because when you really think about it, Kalfani didn't have to really chase after you. He was fed up with Denise and he wanted somebody else to send her home. He didn't want to be the guy to do it. And you were so into him, you put in the effort. Kalfani didn't have to. So Adriana, she goes on about how for her, basically, every week it would change if she liked Kalfani or if she liked Rashid. And I'm like, girl, Don't sit on the stage and act like your heart was just so torn into pieces and you just didn't know if you were going to go left or right, because at the end of the day, you knew that you were actually interested in Kalfani and you kept Rashid on the back burner because you knew that he was only interested in you. I mean, and like Rashid said, he is a one woman type of guy. He was married for 10 years. So he put all his focus on Adriana. And that shit backfired on him because clearly she was not really interested in him. So Tommy finally asked, what ultimately happened that you guys didn't work out? And Rashid says that he felt like there are ages and stages that are a difference for them. They're in different points in their life. And Adriana, it's like as if she took offense to him saying that. And she's like, oh, well, he was consistent, but when it came to someone else coming in, she felt like he didn't fight for her. And I'm like, again, he has explained to you multiple times how he was courting you and he's not about to chase you. So if he's not about to chase you, he damn sure ain't about to fight for you. Like, girl, get a clue. And then she's like, if I would have chose him, then he wouldn't be saying the whole ages and stages thing. And I'm like, girl, I feel like he probably still would have said that, because if y'all did get together, I think after a while, he will realize who you really are and y'all would not be together. So we move on to Kalfani and Denise. And Tommy ends up asking Denise, why was it hard for her to see Kalfani with other women? And she's like, was it hard for me? That's just basically how the show portrayed me to be, was, it was hard for me to handle that. And she's securing herself and all these things. And all the people in the background, you see, I think it was Shay, who was like, that's not true. Winter, first of all, I forgot to mention this earlier in this review. Winter was making all types of faces in the background. I feel like every time Denise said anything, Denise was making a facial expression in the background. Y'all can go ahead and rewatch and let me know if y'all caught it. Kalfani is like, come on, Denise, like, that basically that ain't true and that you felt some type of way. And Denise comes back with, people are taking my assertiveness and they are taking my guard that I put up, and they are taking that as me being aggressive and having an attitude. And I'm like, I'm actually glad that she brought that point up, because at the end of the day, the narrative did not have to be that Denise was jealous, because Kalfani ran with that this entire season, y'all. Once he figured out that Denise, she did feel some type of way about him being interested in Adriana, he automatically, every chance he got to tell somebody, especially in that tavern, that Denise, she's jealous and I don't know if I can handle that. She's just all these things, because like I said, he was waiting on the rest of the guys to decide to give Denise the boot so that he wouldn't have to. And I will be honest and say, yes, Denise definitely felt some type of way about how, Adriana and Kalfani were seeing each other. But with as much unseen footage as we saw with Jay, I feel like there is a lot of unseen footage that happened with Kalfani and Denise that we all need to see. So we finally start talking to Kalfani and Adriana about their relationship, and Tommy starts off by talking about how Adriana's friend felt like she was lusting after Kalfani, and she's like, oh, my friend don't know nothing. And I'm like, girl, no, your friend know you quite well, and your friend was telling the truth. You've definitely been lusting after Kalfani, and that's what made you make the decision that you made. So then Tommy goes on to ask Kalfani, what made you decide to go ahead and go with Adriana. And he's like, oh, we just vibe together and we just have good conversation, all this stuff. And then you hear Denise like, yeah, because I left. And I'm like, yeah, by the time you made the decision, or at least he made the decision of focusing on Adriana, we were at like episode, 9, 10? So the show was almost over. So when asked about, after the show, how the relationship went, Adriana starts up about how Calfani asked her to go to dinner. And when he was at dinner with her, he lets her know that there was another woman in the picture now, who he wants to focus on being with, because this woman has already had a relationship with his kids, and he felt like that was the way to go. Now, when Tommy asks, how soon did this happen, he says that this woman had left a note on his door by the time that he had got back home from the taping of the show. And I'm like, first of all, how ghetto, like, who leaves a note like an eviction notice on somebody's door? Like, does she live in the apartment next door or something? Like, I don't even understand. Especially considering she should probably have his phone number or maybe shot him an email, but like a note on the door? Who does that? So Tommy ends up asking, are you planning on marrying this woman? And he says more than likely. So honestly, there was never a chance with Adriana. So now Adriana is like, well, was everything that they had been through and talked about even real? And Calfani goes on about how he's so genuine and all this stuff, and what they had was real. And I'm like, listen, between him and Jay, I don't know who played more games. Actually, I keep saying that I'm going to make a video. I am going to make a video about all the flaws and foolishness that happened overall this season of the show and how the show can be better. But back to this foolishness. Here goes Tommy trying to play matchmaker again. He's over here like, oh, Adriana, did you think about Rashid after all this went down with Calfani? And she's like, yeah, that's the first thing that I thought about. So then he goes on to ask Rashid if there's a chance for him and Adriana to get back together. And I'm like, listen, this man, he cannot go for a third round of her playing with his heart. Like, we cannot go through this anymore. Rashid, baby, move on. Find you a nice woman that wants to actually be with you and marry you because you are a good man. So as Rashid is explaining, though, about how he has no, he wishes, I won't say no ill feelings, but he wishes Calfani and Adriana the best, I guess on their separate endeavors. He has nothing bad to say about them, and how he was starting to notice how she would act around Calfani being so bubbly and so cute versus how she would react, to him. Now, while he's saying all these things, Calfani and Adriana are over here whispering and chattering, and Tommy is like, hold on, wait a minute. What are you two talking about? And Calfani is like, oh, I'm just asking her if she really felt like what we had wasn't real. And in that moment, I think that Tommy realized that Adriana ain't shit. And he also realized that Calfani ain't shit, because he asked Adriana, so did you hear anything that Rashid was saying? And she's like, no, like a cute little deer in headlights that she always tried to pretend to be. And I'm like, that's your answer right there, Rashid. Don't you ever go back to Adriana. So after this, the show basically wraps up. Tommy goes around and, talks to the cast about what's next for them. And that was pretty much it. Nobody said anything that was outlandish or important. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this review up. This has been a very interesting journey this season of Ready to Love, and I'm ready for the next one. I definitely will be doing an overall review of this show, and that video will be coming out soon after this one, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe, and until next time, guys, bye.